Okay, so you bought a still from us and you'd like to know how to put it together and actually use it. So let's go through it. Next thing you'll want to do is, now that you have your parts together, everything is cleaned, you're going to want to charge your still. So depending on the material, so in this case today I'm going to be distilling lavender. You've got a few options. So you can do a distillation where you have the plant material in the bottom and you would fill the water just below the max. I don't fill it to max because it's a little too much water. You just don't need that much in a 3-hour distillation. And then, so in this case specifically, I'm going to cut the stems, and I'm going to, you want to cut them up in small pieces. I'll put the stems in with clean water. You definitely want your water to be clean and not straight out of the tap, because you start out with clean water, you end up with a clean distillation or clean hydrosol. And then getting back to the material, now I'll say this, these are very well worn. I've used them in many classes, so they look dirty, but they have been sterilized, and also they've had a sitting in citric acid, so don't be alarmed. But anyway, what I do is I process the lavender blossoms, and the lavender blossoms I put in the column. And I'm doing that because I'm creating a hydro distillation, which means we have plant material in the bottom of the still and we have plant material in the column. And that's one way you can do things. You can do straight steam distillation, which would only be water into the bottom of the still, and all of your plant material will be in the column. So that's just a little quick heads up on a couple of styles of distillation. So next what you do is, once you have the material in where you want the material in your still, you're going to just attach it to the bottom of the still, and it screws on. And typically what I do is I get a little bit of coconut oil and just put it around the threads so that it isn't just straight metal on metal, and it makes it a little bit easier to then remove the column. And then once your material is in the still, you're going to put this insert, filter insert, and it just keeps from, now your material needs to be packed in here pretty tight. You don't want this half packed or anything like that, because you're not going to have a good distillation. But however, this is actually really nice to have in case some material. Okay, so before we go any further, we have to talk about heat source. So I have tried a lot of different home style or, semi-commercial heat sources. You can tell this one was well used. I also melt resins, tree resins. So this has tree resin on it, and it looks less attractive than it actually is, but it's incredibly functional. So I have 2 heat sources that I use, and one isn't particularly better than the other. It's just what I'm using in that particular day. So this was a really good investment. This is the New Wave. So sometimes I do induction with my distillation, and sometimes I'm just using the Cuisinart. This is a cast iron flat top. I did buy a couple of commercial coil ring electric single burners, and they were terrible for a couple of reasons. One is I couldn't get the stability for the still, and that was highly problematic. The other thing is I couldn't regulate the temperature, because sometimes once your distillation gets going, you really need to do things like kind of micromanage the heat for a little bit until your distillation is flowing. So the Cuisinart countertop burner was really great to use, and I found the New Wave was also good. The New Wave I got from Amazon. The Cuisinart I picked up at Home Depot, or I think I ordered it online through Home Depot. I just checked pricing. Things have gone up, as everything has, but These are worth it. These are investments, and they're things that you can travel with your still if you'd like, which is what I do. Okay, now that we've talked about the heat source, we are assembling our still. So we have the bottom of the still, the pot, the belly, however you're going to call it. We have the column attached. Inside we have that filter, that insert filter, and we have the top attached onto the column. Then we have the arm, and we have the extender. So then we're going to add the extender to the condenser. Now, at this point, you're going to want to make sure you have something to lift the condenser a little bit. Now, what I use is I use 2 columns. That's how I work pretty much every time. And what it does is it allows me to lift the riser so that I can put a 16-ounce bottle underneath to catch the hydrosol. But so that's always an option for you. But in the meantime, what you can do is, because obviously there isn't the clearance you need to put a jar in. You could put a cup under there, but that's actually labor intensive. So what you want to do is get some food grade hose, which is basically like this, and you can attach it to that and then run it into whatever your jar is, or bottle, or whatever it is you're going to capture your hydrosol in. Make sure your container is sterilized. Okay, so next let's talk about the actual method that we use, or that I use for distillation. So and what I mean by that is, how are we dealing with keeping a condenser cool? Because you need to keep these condenser coils cool. What happens is, when you're distilling, you are creating steam from the water that's in the pot, and then it travels up through the arm, and it becomes evaporated through the arm, and the steam comes through the condenser. Well, you need to cool that down so that you can return it back to a liquid form. Now, you have some options. One option is to set up a water bath. And so what you would do is you would have a hose going in and a hose coming out. They would be 2 separate hoses. They would go into a water bath that would have cooled water, and you would have to have a pump, like a small pond pump, to circulate that water, so that the hot water that's on the top of the condenser gets funneled out, and you have a recirculation of cool water. I have another way that I actually like. So one of the things I really suggest is, a lot of times my distillations have been really successful because I've kept the condenser on ice. So I recommend going to somewhere like Costco, if you have a Costco in your area, and actually buying ice from there. It's very cheap. You can get a 25-pound bag, so you'll be good for a couple of distillations. And what I do is I keep the hose on here, and then I pack my condenser with ice. And as the ice melts, then I just scoop out some of the water, and then I keep packing it with ice. Now, every material is different that you work with. So with flowers and plants, like let's say you want to do a basil or a rosemary or something, you really want to keep it very cold. So that's what I do. For things like if you're distilling tree bark, or something like that, where it's a kind of a harder material, you can go a little bit warmer, so you don't have to keep that ice packed in the condenser. So that's basically what I do. I call it, it's funny because I call it the lazy way of distilling, but it's kind of not. You're still doing a lot of work because you're scooping out the warm water out the top, but I actually really like it because it just ensures that my condenser stays ice cold. And when the hydrosol comes out of the condenser, it comes out cold, and that's what I want. I want it to be that. I wanted to add, these risers are stainless steel, and they are available on Amazon. They're great to have Even if you're not sure you need one now, you'll probably find you need one at some point. So I highly recommend them. I don't know if the price has gone up since tariffs, but they are incredibly useful. And again, I use mine every day or every time I distill. So for me, I do the double column, but even if I do a single column, you can see that it's easy. You don't have to try and find something. I mean, you could use like a wood block, and I've done that, but I like this because I need one anyway. So for me, this works. So it's just a suggestion, but yes, you'll need something, it's about 2 inches, 2.5 inches in height, so that you can get the condenser. You want this condenser at eye level. Pardon me, I'm in work mode, so you'll see lots of roses and all kinds of work mode stuff. So yeah, anyway, hopefully that helps. And of course, please feel free to reach out if there's any questions at all on how to work this still. I've done probably over 1,000 distillations in the last 3 years. So I've done a lot of work in these, and you know, you're not going to necessarily get much for essential oil, but you will get a very rich hydrosol that is much safer to use. And for me, it's just a much more usable product. You can use a hydrosol in so many things. It's not just for skincare. You know, you can care for your animals. You can do hair care. And if you're using sterilized equipment, which you should across the board anyway, these are things you can put in your drinks. You can put in sparkling mineral water. You can make mocktails out of this. So yeah, that's the deal on how to put this wonderful still together. To finish up, these stills will go in the dishwasher. So that's one of the things that I really loved about it. It can go in the dishwasher, so you can truly sterilize the unit. And for me, that was a big win as well. So I hope you enjoy your still, and happy distilling.